this time, so please do that. And there's also a resource tab at the same website, msema.org, and it's the IDA tab. There, you'll be able to see hard damage assessments, what's going on. You'll be able to see what's happening. Well, if you need to have assistance tomorrow, we're actually going to have a team that is going to be answering the phones. If you'll go to that website, if you need individual assistance, if you need help finding a shelter during this heat advisory that's coming up, if you need help with your damage at your home, that's the number that you need to call. We have a fully accompanied individual assistance team that will help you get those things that you do. If you're from Louisiana and you are in the state of Mississippi, there is opportunities for help as well. We've talked with our counterparts in New Orleans, and it is ready.nola.gov. You can, of course, if you're in the state of Mississippi, you can call us here at MEMA, and we will help you transition to make sure that you have a home to go to and that you can be taken care of and have the right support mechanism back in your state when you get there. So MEMA's here hand in hand with the Emergency Management Agency for Louisiana as well. And Governor, that's the end of my brief.
Thank you, Mac, and we'll take questions after everyone has an opportunity to update you. I'm going to call on Jim Craig with the Mississippi Department of Health, who was here on Saturday as well and has been instrumental in the movement and the activations of our healthcare space. So, Jim.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to update you on a few activities from the state ESF-8 and the Mississippi State Department of Health through the day-to-day. As you know, our agency regulates a lot of things in Mississippi, including hospitals and water and restaurants, as well as many others. So we're working to assess a lot of the regulated community as well as the healthcare system, including our medical needs shelter decompression activities, power restoration of those regulated entities, the status of water systems throughout the state, healthcare facility damage, coordination of patient movement through the Mississippi MedCom, coordination of transportation resources from our state and federal resources, such as the ambulances, and monitoring the hospitals and long-term care facilities and restaurants in the state. So far, our assessment teams who have been working all day today report nursing homes. We have 4 nursing homes that are on generator. 2 nursing homes are reporting minor damage. We have an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities. 1 of those facilities is on generator, and 2 are reporting minor damage. As far as the hospitals in the state, we have 5 facilities that are on a mixture of electric grid and generators, and 6 reporting minor damage. Personal care homes and assisted living, we have 2 facilities that are closed with approximately 55 residents relocated to sister facilities or went home with families, and 3 facilities on generator, 3 reporting minor damage, 2 reporting no power. We're continuing our damage assessments, including our water systems, and currently reporting for water systems. 394 water systems have been contacted thus far in about 40 counties. 318 of those are fully operational. 3 systems are not operational. Coles Water Association in Amite County, Pike County Welcome Center in Pike County, and Sunrise Mobile Home Park in Hancock County. There are 4 ball water notices that have been issued to Mount Olive Water Association in Hinds County, Oak Harbor in Hancock County, Sunrise Mobile Home Park in Hancock County, and Willow Grove Water Association in Covington County. We're continuing those assessments, and we'll be working through the night into tomorrow as we work toward assessing for recovery here in Mississippi. It's also important to remember that the storms can be just as dangerous in the after the storm components. So let me go over a few precautions, and Matt covered one of them that I really wanted to make sure that everyone hears, and that's about generators. You know, carbon monoxide is something you can't see, smell, or taste. You don't know that it's there. Don't operate a generator anywhere near your window, in the home. Make sure it's out and away from the building. Signs and symptoms: start having a headache, notice that the skin colors of the family members are turning red, carbon monoxide is present. So again, be very, very safe with the generators. That is usually one of the leading causes for injury that we see after a storm. The second is people operating chainsaws. If you don't operate a chainsaw all the time, today may not be the best time to start trying to practice. Remember that our healthcare system has a lot of pressure on it right now for space. We don't want injuries to occur that may also need that hospitalization. In addition, children playing in floodwaters. We have some localized flooding in the state of Mississippi. Don't allow your children to play in floodwater. There's chemicals, human waste, as well as animal waste as part of that. In the event that they do have contact with it, remember, good hand washing, as well as have an alcohol-based hand cleaner available to sanitize. We are issuing some boil water notices. That's something that occurs from time to time in Mississippi, but if you're not familiar with what to do under a boil water notice, and you have power, you can go to healthyems.com, and we'll have some information out there about things that you can do. Food safety-wise, remember that if it's been more than 2 hours without power, it's probably time to pack your food into ice from a refrigerator so that you can keep it cool or consider cooking or discarding. Remember, if in doubt, throw it out. Anything that's come in contact with floodwater, such as toys or cans or food, also, if it can't be cleaned, it should be thrown out. There are always those injuries during cleanup from nails and other debris. Wear sturdy shoes and gloves as you clean up. If you can't remember when you had your last tetanus, it may be about that time. Talk to your healthcare provider about a tetanus shot. West Nile virus, remember, we've seen more infections due to floodwaters, so protect yourselves. Wear repellent if you're out in the evenings and early mornings. Cover yourself. Beware of standing water. If there is standing water around your home, tip it so that we won't have additional mosquitoes in the area. Lastly, let me update you on testing and vaccine availability. Individuals with appointments at county health departments should receive information as to when their appointments were rescheduled. We believe we'll be able to honor those already made appointments in our northern region, including Carroll, DeSoto, Lee, Prentiss, Tallahatchie, and Yalobusha counties. Vaccine will not be available at our southern and central county health departments on tomorrow. COVID testing will not be available at our southern and central county health departments tomorrow, but the following locations in the north will be open: DeSoto, Pontotoc, Lee, Tunica, Clay, Webster, and Calhoun. It's a short COVID update. Cases for the 3-day period are 7,971 for the weekend, with 82 deaths. 33 of those deaths were reported from vital records. Our ICU capacity remains effectively zero. At 8 o'clock this morning, 9 ICU beds were reported available and 102 being held in the emergency room. Of those 102 being held, 45 were waiting on an ICU bed. We've been asked if we see more COVID cases after the storm. Obviously, it would not be surprising since there are people indoors and perhaps in more crowded situations. So please continue all the safety precautions and get vaccinated if you've not already. The Department of Health stands ready to assist local and state agencies as we continue to recover from Ida. And Governor, that's all I have for today for a brief.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, I'm going to call on General Boyles to come forward and give an update from the Mississippi National Guard. General?
Thank you, Governor. The Mississippi Guard is working with MEMA to support the Governor's guidance on what we need to do to react to any of the remnants of Hurricane Ida. We are a force of over 12,000 men and women. We currently have 165 men and women who are on orders to support the hurricane effort. We can surge to over 1,000 who are currently alerted to support MEMA and to support the Governor's initiative on reacting to the storm. Those specialties are engineering, they're military police, they're logistical, transportation, pod distribution, and so we're prepared to do our job if the Governor needs us to do that. We are also exploring areas, Governor, to help our neighbors in case they need some assistance from Mississippi. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, General Boyles, and I'll just reiterate, those of us that have been around a little while know what it's like to be in a really tough spot immediately following a hurricane like Hurricane Katrina. We know what it's like for men and women from other states across the country to show up and go to work helping us. And as General Boyles and I have talked, as well as Commissioner Tyndall, who will be our next speaker, as we get this storm out of Mississippi, as we do the damage assessments, as we become even more confident that the individuals that are currently deployed and ready to assist in Mississippi are more needed in the state of Louisiana, we will do what Mississippians do. We will step up and we will go to help. At this time, I'm going to ask for an update from the Department of Public Safety, Commissioner Tyndall. He himself a veteran of many hurricanes, being a Harrison County resident, and he's had eyes and ears on the ground throughout South Mississippi over the last 48 hours. So, Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Mac. Both y'all's leadership during this time is evident when you see organizations and agencies coming together to have a unified response to such a natural disaster. I can tell you that we were able to mobilize Mississippi Highway Patrol, Mississippi Office of Homeland Security, MBN agents, as well as our Commercial Truck and Enforcement Division, have them ready in South Mississippi to be deployed to either the coast or to Southwest Mississippi should the need arise. After evaluating the storm as it was making landfall and looking at the conditions in South Mississippi, talking to local law enforcement there, sheriff's office and police chiefs as well as mayors, and also reaching out to sheriffs throughout Southwest Mississippi, it was determined that for the immediate needs today, that our efforts should be focused towards Southwest Mississippi. The situation there from a law enforcement standpoint seems to be in a very good place. We will refocus some efforts along the coast. As we know, in the coming days, there will be a number of travelers coming back to Louisiana or attempting to come back to Louisiana along I-10. So we will have troopers along the interstate to assist them on their return. I can tell you that our Homeland Security, along with other agencies, did a number of swift water rescues. Highway Patrol's dive team also did as well, and were able to save various families, to which we're very proud of. As the governor mentioned, having grown up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, I know all too well about what it means to prepare for storms and to clean up after storms. But I also want to give a lot of thanks to the first responders, because for the first time, I was able to see that while everybody else is cleaning up their yards and preparing for the storm, your law enforcement and other first responders are getting ready to protect you. And during the storm, they're there to protect you. And after the storm, they're there to protect you. So it takes time away from their family, their property, and their needs, and they deserve a lot of appreciation and a lot of thanks. Going forward, I'd like to remind everybody, although we don't see a lot of down traffic lights or electricity is being restored, there still are some areas where you might come across a traffic light that is not operational. If you do come to one that is not operational, you should treat it as a four-way stop. If the lights are blinking red, that means stop, obviously. If they're blinking yellow, proceed with caution. If you don't know what to do when you approach a light or traffic signal and you just don't remember what the rules are at that time, you definitely need to proceed with caution and give right of way to those. And anytime you approach an intersection such as that, you need to assume that oncoming traffic does not know those rules, so proceed carefully. Also, it's going to be turning dark soon. There might be certain areas that still have down trees, down limbs in the road. Keep that in mind as you're traveling, and travel slow and be safe. Again, I think we dodged a bullet. I think everybody realizes that, but there's still some danger, and high water marks are still going to be coming down with the rain. And I know many people are going to want to help our neighbors in Louisiana. So when you do that, don't just go over there on a whim. Make sure you're doing it with a coordinated team and a coordinated response. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I'll open the floor to questions. Courtney Ann.
Governor, can you talk about what the timeline or kind of the indicators would be that would trigger going ahead and sending some of our assets over to Louisiana? Is it once the storm has moved out, once a certain amount of damage assessments have been completed? What's kind of the check marks, if you will?
Yeah, sure, and that's a great question, and it's one that's obviously it's different for every storm, and the assessment is ongoing. To give you an example, we had multiple search and rescue teams here in Mississippi to support us from the federal government. At our 9 a.m. meeting this morning, we discussed with everyone in the room, and we made a joint decision. Well, I guess ultimately I made the decision, but everyone agreed that we would release those federal assets to go to Louisiana as early as this morning. That came after many conversations with Commissioner Tyndall and local law enforcement. You know, one of the good things and the not so good things about being in Mississippi is that we have a lot of resources because we've been through this a lot. And so we have a lot of search and rescue teams at the local level. You look at some of our larger sheriff's departments in Hancock and Harrison and Jackson. They have their own teams. We have many teams at the state level. We have National Guard search and rescue teams. We have Wildlife, Fisheries, and Park search and rescue teams. We have Department of Public Safety and Mississippi Highway Patrol and Homeland Security search and rescue teams. So I made the determination earlier this morning that we could release those federal assets that they had so kindly stationed here, because at that point it was very clear and very evident that we could take care of ourselves. And when you're in a major hurricane of this magnitude, if you can take care of yourself at the local or the state level, it's imperative that you do the right thing and let the federal assets go to where they are most needed. And so we made that decision with the federal assets earlier. As we look at some of the local and state assets, right now, what you see is while the eye, and this is it's a big storm. And so while the eye of the storm is 20 to 25 miles northwest of Jackson right now, some of the biggest risk in terms of what could happen is actually in the outer bands that are actually flying through the Mississippi Gulf Coast and the Alabama Gulf Coast and up into Georgia right now. And so it's those potential tornado spin-outs that are impossible to predict, that certainly have risk associated with them from a tornado standpoint. And so we're going to keep those state and local assets here probably until in the morning, but there are a lot of them that are itching to go and help their friends in Louisiana, and we'll probably release them sometime midday tomorrow to do so, assuming things on the ground do not change.
Governor, can you speak on the virtual meeting you held with the President and just what points you guys hit on when it comes to Hurricane Ida?
Yeah, so I actually spoke first thing this morning with FEMA Administrator Criswell, and we had a good conversation. At that time, we knew that the eye of the storm had entered into Mississippi. We knew that it had slowed down to 8 to 9 miles an hour. The slowing down meant that there was significant rainfall in Pike and Walthall counties and Wilkinson counties and other areas because it had slowed down. But it also meant that as it was moving northward, it was losing strength as well. And certainly we've seen that as it's gotten to the Jackson metro area and north. We're seeing 30-mile-an-hour winds rather than 55 to 65-mile-an-hour winds, which were originally projected. Given how much rainfall that we've received over the last 24 to 36 hours, we were really, really concerned about the potential for 65-mile-an-hour winds with the ground completely soaked and the amount of trees that could fall. We've still seen significant amounts of trees. We've seen a lot of debris. We've seen a lot of limbs fall, but not nearly as much as it might have otherwise could have been. We did speak on a call earlier today with the President. He offered his support. He did approve our pre-landfall declaration, and he has since approved our request to expand it to all 82 counties, not knowing exactly what the landscape would be as we move forward over the next 12 hours or so. So it was a good call. It was a number of people, largely from Louisiana and a few from Mississippi as well. And so at that time, the storm was south of Jackson while it was ongoing, so we were in a very different situation at that time than was Louisiana. They were very much in search and rescue. At the time, we were still very much in the phase of let's see what the storm's going to do as it moves northward, and as we see those outer bounds and what's happening in the southeast part of the state. Okay, Bailey?
Hunter Dawkins with the Gazebo Gazette has a question.
Good.
Hunter? There it goes.
Thank you, Bailey. Thank you, Governor. Quick question that I have for you. I'm pretty sure that you know about this, Governor, that the Health and Human Services declared a public health emergency after the storm today. I know that you spoke about the resources that we're going to try to give quite a number to Louisiana, but based on our COVID hospital numbers, at least, are we using these resources that the Public Health Department in America, HHS, is going to give to us?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with specifically the order that they have released. I will tell you that we have significant assets available to us. They're being staged here in Jackson. I'm going to let Jim Craig talk to you about the specifics of that. Obviously, in a hurricane situation such as this, maximum flexibility to decompress hospitals and to move patients is incredibly important. Not only having that maximum flexibility, but having the means by which to do so certainly helps. We have and had been offered significant assets to do that, from fixed-wing aircraft all the way down to ambulances. And if it's okay with you, Hunter, I'm just going to let Jim walk us through that.
Thank you, Governor. Yes, we have been very fortunate to have about 140 ambulances from the FEMA contract come to our state to assist. Those units are moving into our state beginning at 4 o'clock this afternoon and will continue to move in through 4 o'clock tomorrow. They're staging out at the fairgrounds here in Jackson, and they'll be used to assist with moving patients back into facilities, as well as to help with the 911 call volume that we have, both for COVID and the transfer of COVID patients, as well as those items that might be necessary related to Ida. We are looking at the staging of the air ambulance components and some wheelchair type vehicles that were positioned to a state to see if we can also release those to go in Louisiana to begin assisting over there. But so really the real answer is that they can be used for COVID as well. We'd requested some additional EMS resources to help with COVID. As you remember, the EMS workforce is pretty tight as well, trying to transfer patients all around the state. So it's going to be a very welcome assistance here in the state.
Bailey.
Kobe Vance with MPB has a question.
Thank you. I have two quick questions. First, what are going to be some of the biggest risks facing Mississippians as we go into the night? And second question is, a lot of Mississippians like to go out and help their neighbors. What would be the best course of action for them if they want to go down to the coast and provide a helping hand to rescue crews and people trying to clear roads? Yeah,
so the answer to the first question, the biggest risk as we go into the evening, obviously anytime it becomes dark and there's uncertainty, that gives you reason for pause. The biggest risk, as I see them, and I'll let anyone up here comment on this as well, the biggest risk as I see them, the eye of the storm is northwest of Jackson, about 25 miles probably by this time. It is still packing a lot of rainfall, and so rising water on roads, as well as the potential for trees falling across roads, as well as trees falling across power lines, is still a risk that needs to be considered. And so if you're north of Jackson, the best course of action is to try to stay home tonight, if at all possible. The other major risk that I see going into tonight is there are those outer bands. It's easy for us on the coastline to think that the hurricane is past, but in reality those lower bands are still whipping, and we could see some high winds and potential tornadic activity flow out of those lower bands in South Mississippi, and they're completely unpredictable. And it's certainly something that is a risk, and one that should be considered. With respect to what should individuals that want to be helpful, what should they do? The single most important thing, and we did talk about this some earlier on our call, is it's hard, particularly if you're going to a place that is without power and is battered as much as New Orleans is. It's really important, and this was mentioned today and recommended today, it's really important that there is a true coordinating officer for volunteers, and that you reach out to whomever that apparatus that is set up to coordinate those volunteers to make sure that we're actually getting, we as a country are getting the best bang for the buck. I'm going to let Mac talk a little bit about that and how that would work if it were happening in Mississippi and how we hope it'll work to our neighbors in Louisiana. Mac?
Yeah, some of the things you can do is if you already donate to an organization, donate to that organization, whether it's Southern Baptist, whether it's Team Rubicon. The VOAD is an organization that represents many different organizations. So the key here is to be an organized response that's ready to be received. Certain things at certain times are not, or they're going to clog the system. So it's got to be orchestrated, and that's what the volunteer organizations work with the emergency managers to do. Louisiana's Emergency Management Department, GovSEF, they are the same way that we are. We organize and orchestrate that at the local level because the locals are telling me what they need. So we're making sure that we get the right thing there at the right time. If you bring in crews to come in and paint houses, well, first we need to muck them. We need to get all the debris out of them, the mud, clean them up. We probably got to cut out drywall 3 to 4 or 5 feet up. So you got to get the right timing there with those groups. So, and Mississippi wants to give. We're one of the most giving states. Our VOADs here in the state do an awesome job, as well as our other team members, to be able to go in and rebuild and help those that are in need. But please be organized. If you need to know what organizations, we're happy to give that information out here. Just call us here at MEMA, or if you're going to deploy a group into Louisiana, we can put you in touch with that receiving group there to make sure that we don't overwhelm that local emergency response with something that is not needed at that time or not orchestrated into the response.
Thank you, Mac. Yes, sir.
I know you guys advise people to call their local EOC directors before the storm, and they'll get in touch with you. Just want to know how many of those calls have you all received from the local EOC director, just kind of to assess the damage that has been.
Yeah, well, something we do is I've been meeting with all the emergency management directors throughout the state since I've been appointed this position, and I told each and every one of them, I'm not going to call you in the first 24 nor the first 48 hours. Why? That's because they're busy. They are dealing with mayors. They're talking to the Board of Aldermen. They're working with their constituents in their county. But to caveat that, I also put emergency management personnel from MEMA and disaster reservists in there with them, so we can augment, we can help them during this time, and they do an awesome job. I can't brag enough on the local emergency responders in each county and the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. They're some of the best in the nation. That actually do the things that they do. But it's an orchestrated approach, and you got to look at how many and what is the immediate area in which that emergency manager, what is their concern? Life safety. I mean, they are right at the front line, even though I'm here in Jackson trying to orchestrate it statewide, looking at all 82 counties and the Band of Choctaw Indians. They're right there with it. So we place forward supplies. We push supplies to them in the beginning. We push sandbags. We push water. We push meals. We push PPE packs out to those the shelters, so they would have that where no one would be turned away. And then in turn, we place personnel within there. The National Guard has personnel push forward. We have representatives there from those teams. We've got law enforcement, search and rescue, medical teams there. It's not just MEMA. You got to understand that MEMA thrives because of all the partners in other state agencies that go. So we have a really robust team that ends up in a local EOC. If they need to talk to ESFA, which is medical, Jim Craig's got somebody there. If they need somebody on the emergency management side, we've got somebody there. So we've got the channels that cuts down the amount of calls and the amount of stress on the locals that we can, because we know that they're going to need it. We move it here in Jackson at this state emergency operations center where we reach back into the federal FEMA, so everything's compiled here, and we're orchestrating it in a timely manner to them, and it's worked very well during the response. Proud of all the partners that we bring to the table there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Governor, I know Commissioner Tyndall mentioned he felt like we dodged a bullet. Can you and Mac perhaps speak to this idea? We always know that we prepare for the worst, pray for the best, but just this idea of how you all are feeling, if you feel like you can exhale a little bit now, that it's not as bad as it could have been?
Well, Courtney Ann, let's be honest. I spoke with Governor Edwards on Friday morning, and Governor Edwards in Louisiana was mentioning to me that he and Administrator Criswell were together on Thursday morning, I believe in Morgan City, if I'm not mistaken, because it was the 1-year anniversary of the storm that hit Morgan City last year. Well, when they were sitting there on Thursday morning, neither of them anticipated that Ida was going to become a hurricane, much less a high Cat 4 hurricane hitting the Gulf Coast. And so one of the things that this particular storm reminded us is that every storm is different, and that we're looking at 3 different disturbances off the coast of Africa right now, but most of them, but they're not going to get in the Gulf or or head up north for the next 6 to 8 to 10 days. So most of these storms that come off of Africa, you have a pretty significant amount of time to at least watch, to look. This one just sort of popped up, and it popped up very strong very quickly. And so the 72 to 96 hours from, say, Thursday at noon to today at noon have been busy. Let's just say that. It's been busy for all of these various partners, and so we are, when you talk about what are our emotions, it certainly warms my heart and makes me proud to be a Mississippian to see how quickly these men and women stood up their operations and leaned forward and were prepared for whatever came our way. And as you watched Hurricane Ida come through the Gulf, the forecasters were confident early and became more confident in its path. But we also know that Hurricane Katrina, some 16 years ago from yesterday, really took a very similar path, but then ticked back east at the end and ended up hitting right there in Pearlington near the Louisiana-Mississippi line. I think for all of us that were in the planning stages over the last 4 days, when you talk about planning for the worst, that was in the back of our mind the entire time. It is not unusual for hurricanes as they move towards shore to tick back east when they get near or around that mouth of the Mississippi River. And if you look at a map and you look at Louisiana and you see how far down south it is, it's just really not that far. It doesn't take much of a tick back to the east for it to change everyone who is affected significantly. The other thing I will tell you in terms of where we find ourselves now is this storm was big and growing and so big, and so we kept seeing those wind shears at the bottom of, well, south of the eye of the storm, and what they were doing 40, 50, 60, 100 miles east, and that certainly gave us great reason for pause and great concern, and made us want to lean forward even more. And so that's, I don't know that, I think we've got to remember that the storm is still in Mississippi. It can still do damage. We want to get through the next 12 hours before we make any final determinations, but we could be in a very different position now. Listening to many of the local elected officials from Louisiana on the call earlier today, I can assure you that they are in a very different position than where we are right now. Bailey.
Gracie Harris with NBC News has a question.
Hi, everyone. I was just going to ask if you all could repeat again about the 20 water rescues that occurred. I didn't quite take down the timeline, and I just wanted to make sure I had the 3 counties correct and the time span from which they occurred. Thank you.
The water rescues, to my knowledge, all occurred in Hancock, Harrison, and Jackson counties. And I don't really have a timeline other than they've occurred over the last 36 hours. Thank you, Bracy.
Emily Pettis with the AP has a question.
My question is for Governor Reeves, and it's about COVID. Given the high transmission rate of COVID in Mississippi, Governor, I wanted to ask you about comments you made Thursday evening at a political fundraiser up in the Memphis area, where you said that people in Mississippi and the Mid-South were a little less scared about COVID. when you believe in eternal life, when you believe that living on this earth is but a blip on the screen and you don't have to be so scared of things. I was wondering if you could expound a little bit upon those comments, what you meant by that, and whether you have any concern that that might take away people's willingness to take preventative measures.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, Emily. What I meant when I said that is exactly what I said, and I feel certain that you have read the article in which the very next sentence after I said what you just asked, I also said that the Bible also teaches us to take necessary precautions. And in our state and in our nation right now, there are certainly necessary precautions that we can take with respect to COVID. But I believe very strongly in my faith. I believe very strongly in what the Bible says. And the Bible is very clear that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. And that is my worldview. It's how I believe. It's what drives me every single day. And I think it's what drives a large number of Mississippians. We should take necessary precautions with respect to COVID, but we also understand that we do have everlasting life if we believe in Jesus, if we believe in God the Father, and I certainly do.
Taylor Vance with the Daily Journal has a question.
Yes, obviously the worst of the storm has impacted the counties down on the coast, but my question is there anything in particular that citizens in Northeast Mississippi should be concerned about? And is there any way, beyond what's already been said today, is there any specific ways that citizens in Northeast Mississippi could help our neighbors down in South Mississippi?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, Taylor. What I would say to you is the storm now is a little bit north of Bentonia. And so if you know Mississippi well, and I know most of your viewers do, and most of the people that are watching now, if you take a line from Bentonia to Tishomingo County, or literally the far northeast corner of our state, and draw a straight line there and go 50 miles in either direction, then it is likely that you're going to be impacted over the next 8 to 10 to 12 hours from this storm. The impacts are going to be rain. There's going to be a lot of rainfall throughout that region, I would presume. There's also going to be some wind. It's not 65 to 75 miles an hour, which we were originally believing that it might be, but still it's blowing at 25 to 30 miles an hour sustained and up to 35 to 40 in gusts. And so what I would say is if you can stay inside, please stay inside. And the reason for that is the kind of risk factors that exist are trees falling over roadways, trees and or limbs falling on poles and other power mechanisms. And so we could potentially see loss of power in parts of the state other than what we've seen thus far on the coast and in southwest Mississippi. And so again, just pay close attention to the weather. And you know, these storms are obviously very unpredictable, and so right now we think that the rain and the potential of clogged roadways and debris is the biggest risk, but things happen, so pay close attention.
And Bobby Harrison has a question. Bobby? Okay, maybe not. We're good. Oh.
Governor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know this is correct. I think it's correct, but there's been no fatalities in Mississippi as a result of this storm. Is that correct?
There has been one fatality in an automobile accident, and was it on I-110?
I-110, prior to the storm.
It was on I-110. It was prior to the storm, but it has been reported that it was an individual that had gone to pick up sandbags, and so, but that was a traffic fatality in Harrison County on Interstate 110. Before the storm made landfall, though. Yes, ma'am.
I know that this comes up, and it may be too soon to know, but oftentimes when we talk about assistance and what the state will qualify for, do we think that because it continues to impact so much of the state that perhaps increases our chances of being able to get some of that federal assistance? It's not just a coastal view of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to say something about your question earlier. Can I take a deep breath now? No. No, I cannot. It's still in the state. Governor and I talked about it, and this is one of those events that it's slow. It's almost like watching the Mississippi River rise. I don't get comfortable. So when you're looking at what does the state have to do to get a declaration? Well, public assistance was pretty straightforward, about $4.5 million worth of damage statewide, and then that's broken down. Each county has to qualify per capita thereof, and we've got those splits that we can definitely give to you to let you know what that is. But also you have individual assistance, that comes into a declaration as well. You could get one, not the other, or the other, or not backside. So. But also what the state legislatures have been able to do, along with the governor, is to provide us with ways to, in case we don't get a declaration within a county when we apply for a federal declaration, and that is we have a DART program, which is a disaster assistance repair program that we work within the counties and the long-term recovery committees that the local EM directors set up, and that has been very, very effective. We have repaired we spent $8.5 million, and we repaired, if I'm not mistaken, about 900 homes in the last 3 years just out of the state program, which has been very significant. And that's where our volunteers come in, though. They come in and volunteer the labor and things of that nature. So a couple of different ways for this disaster to be looked at, and we're definitely going to turn over every leaf to get every Mississippian what we deserve and what we are capable of actually qualifying for, so we can rebuild quicker. And I won't be good until it leaves Tishomingo County and the state is clear.
And you brought up, I guess, my comment about the state dodging a bullet, and I just want to say there's one thing that I learned very clearly in Katrina is that you can have a lot of property damage, you can lose your home, you can lose your business, and those are all things that you can replace. But what you can't replace is human life. And one of the things that I know on the coast and throughout southwest Mississippi is we haven't had that loss of human life like you've seen in Louisiana. And that's really what I'm talking about, because there's certainly been property damage. I know folks have lost businesses during the storm and had damage to their homes. But that is one lesson that I learned personally in Katrina, and I think a lot of folks learned, and that's what I meant by that. So, thank you.
Seeing no further questions at this time, just a reminder that we do have about 10 to 12 more hours of this storm being in the state of Mississippi. Be cautious, be aware, be weather aware, and working together we'll come through this. Again, we'll come before you again soon, I am sure, but in the meantime, again, I just want to thank everybody, all the men and women that these men and women behind me represent. There's literally been a group combined effort that has just been astronomical, and they make me proud to be a Mississippian. So thank y'all, and God bless.